Hello, everyone, and welcome to the launch of the wonderful Stories from the Streets compiled by Theresa Mitchell. And I have to admit, this book is wow. Wow, 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 Teresa, you have the biggest heart, I swear, ever. So welcome, Teresa.
Thank you.
So, Teresa, we're going to have a little conversation about this project because we've been talking about this project for a while, haven't we? Behind the scenes, we've touched base over the years, and I know that this was always a heart-centered goal for you. And then all of a sudden, it called loud, and you pulled it, started pulling it together. And it's no mean feat to pull together 30 stories. But before we talk about the how and how you made it happen, I just want to share with everyone. There's a quote at the beginning of this book, and it's by Teresa herself, and it says, "If you see a person in need, help them. It is that easy." Isn't it, Teresa?
I definitely think so. That's for sure. Yes.
So let's talk about the project and the essence of it and where it came from. And you share your story in this book as well, to share with others, to share their stories and how powerful it can be to share a story
hmm
for others to connect. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I've been working Agape Outreach, founded it 12 years ago, and there's just so much of a stereotype out there in the community that homelessness is, mental health, mental illness, the picture of the elderly gentleman with the dreadlocked head pushing along a shopping trolley full of gear. And I just thought, well, there's such mixed ideas in the community. I really wanted people to see what I see and connect with the hearts that I'm connecting with on a daily basis too. Homelessness is so incorporating of everybody. Like no one is immune from becoming homeless. So with domestic violence, with of course mental illness, veterans. So there's just so much to cause homelessness, right down to people with terminal illness. So just look outside at the price of rentals these days. All of these things add up. And like you said, I started talking to you, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago, about publishing this book. And truthfully, it was just I'd start fundraising to cover the cost of publishing it. And then something else would pop up. Winter would come around, and I'd have another vulnerable woman in her 70s living in a drain pipe, or we've just had recently one who's 64, who's disabled and nearly died on us. So, and I would pay to put these people in motels as opposed to fundraising money towards the book. But to me, this book is an education tool. It's about educating people out there in the public about what homelessness is, because we need to change policy. We need to change how we look at people in poverty and in need, and we need to be able to help more. And that's not going to happen if we can't humanize these people who are the most silent and the most unseen.
Oh, you just wrap it all up there in those few minutes. It is that quite often the people that do end up homeless are just going through a vulnerable time in their lives, and as a helping hand from someone, or just a bit of a break, or just something from someone can help change and navigate them onto a different path. Do you think so, Teresa? Because I'm sure you've had many people.
I believe that people shouldn't be alone in their hardest times. And I think that's what drives me. I've never really been homeless myself, but I have experienced domestic violence. I have experienced sexual abuse. I have experienced, not having somebody there to look after you in your time of need and not knowing where to reach out to. And I do know what it feels like to have that void in your gut of
Mhm.
what do I do now? And I know that the other speakers tonight can absolutely relate to that, that I totally believe we should be able to say, you know what, we're here to help and give hope back, if nothing else. That's a starting point.
Mhm.
So I don't want people to be alone in these circumstances. And I've seen story after story, and you'll read some in the book, where I believe the outcome would have been very different if there wasn't someone there to guide them through the way.
Wow. Absolutely. I'm going to share the beginning of a chapter that you wrote called Unconditional Love.
Hmm.
Wow. When we place any expectation on our giving, we make our expression of love conditional. We also place ourselves at risk of hardening our hearts to others in need. While we may be able to justify hardening our hearts in certain circumstances, keep in mind that it is us, our heart, that we are changing. This may make us feel safer, but at the same time, we are hanging on to the pain which hurts us in the long run. Oh, because life can be, harsh, and some people may not be able to give freely, or with a closed heart, and may protect themselves. But unconditional love is what our world needs right now, isn't it? That helping hand and helping the neighbor and things like that. And a little bit of love goes a long way, doesn't it, Teresa?
Absolutely, definitely. And any of us are capable of doing it. But I hear too often, oh, this person did the inappropriate thing with my giving, so I'm not doing that ever again. And that saddens me. It really does, for that person's loss. There is so much beauty to be found in relationship when we are open to giving and sharing with others. And, it could be as little as a smile. Just don't cut ourselves off. I encourage to people, and through my staff as well, and I say, look, you put boundaries around yourself, but make the decision on what you can give, and then don't feel guilty about it with whatever happens to it. Give because of the person you are, not because of how it's received. And quite frankly, this world does need more people that are givers in it, because there is plenty of pain. Let's fill the void and become what's missing in the world.
And in that bit that I read, to give without expectation, and then we can never be disappointed, because people will react and receive our giving in different ways. Quite often someone who is in a vulnerable state, or even a homeless person, still has, may still have some integrity and things. That's the thing, is everyone's still human, and we react to things, especially whenever someone is acting out of kindness, and you may not be anticipating that, your initial reaction may, but the kindness and the love that you will share, and that helping, holding your hand out, will have a more of a long-term effect on someone else. The giving is never wasted.
Yeah,
It isn't.
definitely. I talk about in the book as well, about in that unconditional giving, that we don't make pre-assumed assumptions. People that are in pain, people that are in poverty, they might not respond the way we expect them to respond. They might be lashing out to start off with as people walk past. And I don't definitely want to put a stereotype on, but this stuff happens. And, if it happens to us and we're losing it in our house, that's one thing. But homeless people don't get to have a house to sort of do anything in. Everything is very visible. So even like one of the things I would have mentioned in the book is, like, we've had people with $60,000 cars pull up and ask for help. Now I hear chatter in the background going, oh, they don't need help. Well, how do we know?
Hmm.
We take a snapshot of what we see in that time, and we can make a judgment on it. I have had women in circumstances that have split with their husbands, whether it be domestic violence or whether it be, just a separation, and the bank accounts are closed and they have access to absolutely nothing. And maybe the car is the last possession that they've got on them. And they'll go from charity to charity looking for help, and they'll be turned away because they don't have a pension card, because it's all new and it's all fresh. And they'll walk into me and I'll say, that's fine, we can help you. And they'll break down bawling on my shoulder.
Somebody to be receptive of the vulnerable situation, because you're at your wit's end. You're just searching for, oh my goodness, it's amazing, amazing. So I'm going to go through the contents of this book. Just kind of government regulations is what you speak on, because knowledge is key, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
um what is homelessness? What causes homelessness? Youth homelessness, homeless pets, the unconditional love that I introduced you to there. You're covering it all, and then 30 stories from people who have experienced it. Um, what's one that really pulls at your heart or sticks out in your mind, Teresa?
Oh, I can't pick just one. There's
I
so
know it's unfair.
many. Um, oh, look, I feel like I would sort of be dismissing some, whether it be a little tiny snippet or whether it be a larger story. I suppose one that, spoke large to me is about the teenage girl when we first started, and her dad was a hippie who'd come homeless on the street. He'd had a business in the area and decided that he was just sick of the rules and regulations and he was going to live the Allah natural life. And then her mum had obviously split with him, and then she got a stepdad on the scene. And this teenage girl decided that she just didn't want to live by the stepdad's rules. So she followed in dad's footsteps and became homeless. And then she'd come to our meal at night and she'd break down bawling on my volunteer's shoulders because she'd be selling her body for accommodation. She'd been partying, she'd been taking drugs. She knew that she had issues. She was ending up in places that were dangerous. And she'd say to us, I think someone's going to kill me tonight. And my volunteers would just be, I want to take her home. I want to, and I can't allow that to happen. So for safety with the volunteers, I took her home a number of times. And I actually was a foster carer at that stage for intensive needs kids. So I spoke to her parents and to her, and she was really happy to come and live with me. And the parents were happy for me to take her because they couldn't handle what was going on with her. But the foster care system wouldn't take her. They said at 15, she was too old. She wasn't in danger. So even though she was in this situation, so they wouldn't put her into my care as a foster child. So the only place I could get her was into a mental ward because there are no rehabs for kids under age of 18. In there, she was diagnosed drug-induced bipolar. So, but she managed to get clean and come back out again and go back and live with mum. I still continued to work with them in that process. She studied hard and went to high school to get her grade 10 certificate. At that stage, all they had to do was basically turn up for their certificate, put their name on the paperwork, and they would pass. And I got the pleasure of supervising her exam. I saw other kids do exactly that. They put their name on the paperwork, put their head down and slept for 2 hours, but she worked her heart out and she passed that. And it was the proudest mummy moment that I'd ever had. So just to see her starting to excel. From there, she went on to a hairdressing apprenticeship. She contacted me when she turned 21 for her birthday, and I saw her a couple of months ago. Her and her partner have just bought a house.
Oh, it does my heart good to hear that. Doesn't it just go to show that that act of kindness, and just not another door slammed in your face, can help someone, just not go down it could have been so different. Oh, that's amazing. A beautiful story. Okay, Teresa, we have three amazing guests joining us today as well, and Teresa is going to have a conversation with them. We have Manuela Whitford, we have Melissa Groom, and Karen Bayless. And first of all, we're going to meet Manuela. I'm just going to get your bio here so everybody can know who you are. Manuela Whitford is one of our guest speakers, married, mother of three, clinical nurse, working full-time in the drug and alcohol and mental health sector, and proudly standing and speaking out against domestic violence, both saddened and infuriated by the sheer numbers of incidents and witnessing the extensive and debilitating effects on a daily basis to not only victims of domestic violence, but to their families, friends, and the community. There's no doubt you wanted to actively make change. Manuela, I invite you down to have a conversation with the amazing Teresa. I can't wait to hear this. I'm going to just pin you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. And thanks, Theresa, for inviting me. And hello to Melissa and Karen. And I guess, I've known Theresa now for almost 6 years.
Yes.
And I'm in absolute awe of how you just do everything so gracefully and just with your heart. And it's really just amazing to see the impact that you've had, not only onto the people that, are telling their stories in the book, which I'm yet to read. So hang in there, and I'm bracing myself, but to the people that you network with. I mean, you've made a difference to myself, just putting out what Friends with Dignity do and how we do it. So it's about that. You don't only give to the people that you're working with or your mission, but you're giving out to the rest of the community. So thanks for all you're doing.
Thank you. So Agape Outreach, we're a homeless charity. We run the Heart of Women Awards. So, and part of that is that I've had such a struggle over the years putting Agape together. And quite frankly, it's just like I want to showcase and pat on the back other women who are doing such a difference in the community. And it doesn't matter to me whether it be environment or whether it be in what space it is, you know, homelessness or whatever. There's so much need out there. I want to encourage more people to do it. And Manuela and some of your associates have been winners in our awards over the years. So congratulations with that.
Thank you.
Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about Friends in Dignity?
Yes, so Friends with Dignity, we're a community-based organisation. We rely on volunteers and we service we help men, women and children that have been affected by domestic violence. We work through organisations and services that are registered with us, and they themselves are registered services focusing on the domestic violence sector. We work on a referral basis with these services, and we've currently got 4 programs that we run. Our main one, and essentially what started the whole process, is our Sanctuary program, where we fit out a home that is found for the family, and we go in there and we kit it out with everything, with furniture, food, and everything that I would like to walk in the front door and have. So everything that's necessary to start off afresh. One of the gaps that was that I researched when I put all this organisation together was that the transition from leaving the partner or the perpetrator to then finding, freedom, I guess, from that abuse and starting their life afresh, was that it was really around assets and stuff that was so, that you could just place. So they were really attached to stuff as opposed to moving out and getting away from this violent relationship. So we also really needed to recognise that domestic violence is the top leading cause of homelessness in Australia. And that to me in itself blew my mind. I came from South Africa, and coming into a first world country and knowing these statistics really, really shook me a little bit. And I must say, I was naive to domestic violence myself. I've never been affected directly, but certainly have seen the impact of domestic violence and the ripple effects of it. So in that sense, the research was based on what do we need to do as a community, as society, to make a difference to people that have been affected by domestic violence. At that time, I was also working within the prison system and doing empowering groups with the women. And the main stories that came out were stories of abuse and violence, and whether it was from a brother, a uncle, a partner, whatever it was, they were having this abuse within their home. And to me, that was also foreign, where in South Africa, you're having abuse and violence outside your home from people that you don't know. These people were actually experiencing this violence and abuse from people they did know. And that was really quite overwhelming, I guess, for me. And when the research came about, it was like, what can I do as a person, not waiting for bigger bodies as your government and your local councils to do anything, but what can I as a person do to make a difference? And basically I developed these relationships with services, and one of them called me and said that there was a woman coming from Perth with her kids, and what can we do? Well, at that time, my container was coming over from South Africa, and I had extra beds, and I had an extra bicycle and extra stuff. And within, I think, 48 hours, we literally housed this woman. So it was really, it was an eye opener to see how the community can actually come together and make a joint effort to make a difference to a person that they didn't even know. But people want to help. They really want to give, and they want to make a difference. We were just giving them a pathway to do it. So the more people that can provide pathways, the better. So, we've got many people out there now trying to help and stuff. And why wait for somebody else to make it if you can make that little bit of a difference?
I totally agree. The community is so fabulous. And without them, I don't think many of our organisations would exist, because this stuff isn't really funded. So the tangible items, the support for people to leave. I know the government's just brought out a $5,000 plan to help people leave domestic violence to feel safe. But it's only $1,500 in, upfront costs to help set up. Have you seen the costs of setting a place up these days?
Listen, it costs us more than $1,500 per home, and honestly, if we don't get donated a fridge or a washing machine, we are committed as a charity to go and purchase that stuff. And a fridge and a washing machine, there's your $1,500 already gone.
Yeah.
Not to mention the contract to go and pick up the furniture and deliver it. Not to mention, if there's a mattress that's not good, we then go and replace that mattress and buy a new mattress. If people do not donate in time, laundry stuff, we go and get that. And that means me turning a couple of sausages and frying a couple of onions and selling them at Bunnings, So we've all got a role to play in helping our neighbour. And then again, and I'll point that out, and you've said it before, Theresa, with no, unconditionally, there's no expectation. One big thing that's come out of my volunteering and founding this organisation was that we need to change people's perception of homelessness, domestic violence, alcohol and drugs, addiction, mental health. I work in the industry, both domestic violence, alcohol, drugs, and mental health. And I can tell you now, not one or the other causes, there's no mutual thing. There are comorbidities and there are sort of links to it, but we certainly can't judge people with regards to their mental health, their status quo, whatever it is. We just can't. We have to change people's perception. And through that is education. And I think your book is going to educate a lot of people and open a lot of people's eyes to that.
That's definitely the goal. In perception, like you mentioned, men going through domestic violence before as well. I know I have some clients with men that have been in these situations and impacted emotionally and physically. How are you finding domestic violence through your organisation causing and affecting homelessness in both men and women?
Huge. Like I said before, DV is our leading cause of homelessness. And, through a study through the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, it was noted up to 50% of people that were seeking or accessing any help to homelessness services were being affected or had been affected by domestic violence. That's big. That's a lot of people. We know statistics, 1 in 3 people by the age of 15 are being either sexually abused, violated, whatever it is. I'm so glad coercive control is now being identified as a form of abuse, because it is control. So whether you can fight it and you can argue it, but any form of control, whether it's physical, emotional, financial, name it, it's abuse. And it's a loss of that person's individuality. It's a loss of that person's freedom. And I guess the main thing for me is people being able to be themselves and being safe. If that's a priority to everybody, if everybody put as much into that for themselves as to others, I think we could make a change. I also constantly say I'm looking forward to the day that my role in domestic violence sector becomes redundant, but sadly it's not looking like the case very soon.
I totally understand. And I suppose I just want to touch back on the men, that I don't believe there's any refuges out there for men escaping domestic violence. It's still the case, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. And there's a lot of factors why domestic violence in men is not really, focused on or really highlighted. There's a lot of things. associated to that. A lot of men don't report it as domestic violence. Coercive control now being identified as a form of abuse. I think we're going to get a lot of men coming out. Unfortunately, it is a gendered issue at the moment. People are focused on women and children. Yes, they are more vulnerable and they're more susceptible. You will find in cases if somebody has to leave the home and it's the woman, they're more likely to have dependents with them as opposed to a man leaving the home. They'll seek refuge on the street, which is fine. The women and men are more vulnerable, women and children. But we need to also highlight the fact, and you made the point, Theresa, is that from the age of 15, they're not seen as a child anymore. They've got access to Centrelink. They can go into a share house and everything. Oh my God, how do you put a child at 15 vulnerable with other people that they have no idea of their own boundaries, never mind, about other people's boundaries? So they're vulnerable when they're going into these situations. Domestic violence is a form of, it's a behavior. There's no diagnosis as a domestic violence diagnosis. It is a behavior. It's a learned behavior, and it's something that can be controlled. It's still a choice. Now with men, you've got people, saying, oh, but women don't hit men. Well, there's again our perception and our education on what domestic violence is. Men would more likely choose to be homeless than to be in a home that they're being abused. They're more likely not to report the domestic violence because of the stigma attached to being a weak man. Don't cry, grow up, you're a big boy. Boys don't cry. So men don't share emotions as they should. So it starts reflecting or coming out in other behaviors. So drinking alcohol, using drugs, gambling. There could be a lot of factors. So with men, we've helped about 13% of what we've done to date have been men.
Thank you. We're going to have to keep moving at the moment, Manuela. But
no worries.
Thank you so much for that information. That was so insightful. So Manuela Whitford from Friends with Dignity.
Thanks, Theresa. Thanks so much.
Okay, so I think we've got Melissa next. Karen, are you doing an introduction to her?
Yes, we have Melissa Groom joining us, and thank you so much, Manuela. Amazing insight. We really appreciate it. So Melissa is the founder of Empowered Mums Business Network, editor-in-chief of the Mums in Business magazine, and a coach and facilitator with the Speakers Institute. She teaches communications and video mastery to entrepreneurs so that they can share their message with the world and make a bigger impact. Melissa has overcome many adversities in her childhood, and she encourages others how to use their voice, speak their truth, and light up the world one video at a time. And I believe that Melissa has a story in the book. So thank you so much, Melissa. I'll leave it over to you, Theresa.
Definitely. Hi, Melissa. So thank you for joining us tonight. Would you like to share with us what your connection to homelessness is and thoughts around it? Because yes, you do have a story in the book. So what would you like to share with us?
I have written some notes, and I'm not telling my whole story, but I have got the story in the book, obviously, and I really appreciate the opportunity, because it does matter to me that, like all of us here tonight have shared, that we want to break down the stereotype of why people are homeless. So I've just written a little story that I'd like to share, if that's okay.
Okay.
Have you ever felt homeless when you walked by a homeless person, helpless when you walked by a homeless person and you wondered how you could help them? Or thought to yourself, there's nothing that I can do that can make a difference? I have found that taking the time to educate yourself around why people end up homeless, one may become less judgmental, more empathetic, and able to act and speak with love and kindness the next time that they come in contact with someone who is homeless. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, there are 116,427 Australians who are homeless, and nearly 60% of homeless people are under 35 years. 1 in 201 Australians are currently homeless. Let's define homelessness. A person can be considered to be homeless who are experiencing living in an improvised dwelling, a tent, or sleeping out. in supported accommodation for the homeless, or staying temporarily with another household and do not have a usual residence, also known as couch surfing, staying in a boarding house or other temporary lodging. We may also assume that homeless people always have a choice, but that is not always the case. Perhaps you assume that homeless people are associated with being a criminal, or drugs and alcohol are the cause, mental illness, domestic violence, sexual abuse, divorce, separation, and they have no family. And some may think that homeless youth are troubled kids who don't do as they're told and are rebels. Well, how about becoming homeless as a result of speaking your truth? You may think it's their problem, not my problem. There's organisations that can support these people. There's nothing that I can do that can make a difference. In my opinion, I believe that we have a moral obligation as a society to care for one another and help those who are less fortunate than ourselves, whether that is our friend, our elderly parents, our neighbour, or even a stranger. Let me take you back to the most significant day of my life. It was spring of 1986, and I was 14 years old. I had just started a new school that week. It was my 7th school that I had attended. I was used to change. We moved around a lot growing up. This particular day, I was called out of the classroom by a student who said, "The school counsellor wants to meet you. Don't worry, it's okay. She just wants to welcome the new students." As we entered the school office and I walked along the corridor, I felt my heart racing and everything around me went silent, except the loud pounding noise coming from my chest. We arrived at the school counsellor's office, and as the door opened, I gave a quick, awkward smile to the lady. I looked straight past her to see another lady and man in her office. I felt alarmed and wondered what was about to happen. They stood up and introduced themselves. "We are from the Department of Welfare, and we want you to know that you don't have to go home." I plunked myself back in the chair and I burst into tears. "Finally, I'm free," my inner child cried. "Thank you, God. Finally, somebody believes me." I felt that I'd been living in hell for so long. My sexual abuse started when I was 9 years of age, and it was from both of my stepfathers. I then went to live with my father and my stepmother, who came to pick me up from the Department of Welfare that day at school. And with the support, I chose to take both men to court, which took many years during my adolescence. My security that I had known with my dad and my stepmother ended abruptly one day, and I had to go and live with an older cousin. Before long, I was in an apartment with my older stepsister, who was only 19, trying to support me. And I was in my final year of high school. And one day she came home from school and she said, "I'm moving to the city." The whole apartment was empty apart from my room, and the electricity had been turned off. I had packed my belongings in a green garbage bag and I walked to the nearest telephone booth, and I phoned my father, and he said to me, "I can't help you. I have no money." So I had no idea what my next move was going to be, and I rang the police. And basically they gave me the phone number for the Sydney City Mission, and I called them up and they recommended a youth refuge at Brookvale that I phoned up, and they invited me to attend an interview and a tour. I went along to the house. There was a sign out the front that said Radio House Youth Refuge. It was a house that John Laws and 2UE raised $1 million to house children from the street and broken families. So with their support, I spent the next 18 months finishing my high school certificate, and basically they saved my life. So just moving on from that, their act of love and kindness saved my life, basically. And I believe that we can create a more caring community if we show more compassion and understanding of those who are homeless. Many have experienced major trauma in their life and family breakdowns as a result. And I encourage you to have an open mind about homelessness. And before you judge them, remember, everything is not always as it seems. And next time you come across a homeless person, show some love and kindness. Give them a smile, say hello, and even ask them, are you okay? And how can I help you? You may just save their life.
That's beautiful,
So,
Melissa. Thank you
yeah.
so much. And thank you for your vulnerability and honesty there in sharing your story. Like, obviously, I've read your story because it's in the book. And, you know, it is really something to step over the pain and the emotions from the past and to be able to share that, because we know of the help that it's going to have other people, because we can't put our story out there without someone else relating to it, and then hopefully emphasizing with us to where we are now and how we've come through it and taking that on board. And it's just so important. So thank you so much for your vulnerability there and for putting that story forward into the book and for sharing with us today. So Melissa Groom, the Visibility Mentor, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa. We have the amazing Karen Bayless coming down to join us. Karen, welcome. Do you want to unmute? Karen Bayless, the General Manager from Wounded Heroes, will be joining us to speak on homeless veterans. Wounded Heroes is a national community organisation established in 2007 to support Australian servicemen and women and their families, and to ease the financial, emotional, and personal hardships of contemporary military life. They specialise in frontline support 24/7 for current serving ADF members, veterans and their families in financial crisis, homelessness or at risk of homelessness. This is principally done by providing short-term emergency relief from payments to individuals and their families, although funds are available for other purposes where the needs exist. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you. I do apologise about how dark things are. I've had to stop in my car so that I could have a chat. I'm very sorry about this, as opposed to sitting in the office. So Wounded Heroes has been around for 14 years. Our founder, Jim Shapcock, was a serving member of the Australian Defence Force, and he saw a real need for veterans and current serving members who are in financial crisis. A lot of people don't understand how a veteran or a current serving member could become homeless. And I'm an army wife. We move around quite a lot. It's very difficult to find a job at times because a potential employer will look at a spouse's CV and see that in 20 years they've had 15 jobs, and it looks like there may be something wrong with that person and they may not necessarily obtain a job. So we tried to support an entire family, because if one of the partners is unable to work, they still have 3 kids, they still have 2 cars, and then they move to a new posting and they only have 1 income. We've had scenarios where we've had to assist with current serving ADF members with paying electricity. One of our President Martin tells a story about a family who finally reached out when they were at a point they had sold the soldiers' medals. They were sitting in the dark when he turned up to the house. They had gotten to a point where they'd told the children that they would need to sell their PlayStation and their Xbox so that they could afford to eat. They'd fed the kids 2-minute noodles, they'd fed the dogs, and they hadn't eaten for 2 days. So this is a reality for some serving members, is that they really do struggle and they don't reach out until it is absolute crisis. So when someone discharges then from the military, there could be a number of reasons why they discharge. It could be of their own volition, but it also could be because they have a psychological or a physical injury that prevents them from doing their job. And when this happens, this may also prevent them from working in other vocations as well. And then they unfortunately end up being homeless. There's lots of reasons why our veterans can end up being homeless, and it's not just from physical or psychological injuries. It could be due to the breakdown in a marriage, the stresses that relate to financial deployment pressures, any sort of effects from drugs, alcohol, gambling, domestic violence, and then one partner leaves the marital house and enters into homelessness, and this is usually when we step in. Mental health is also a contributing factor, PTSD and the range of other conditions that our serving members end up acquiring through their service. It can affect their ability to be able to retain employment, and at times when their mental health deteriorates, we end up then having to place them into clinics or a facility to help them become well if they are at risk of self-harm. Physical health is definitely an issue as well. You know, if you are physically unable to be employed, obviously that does become an issue as well. And the problem is, depending on how long you served and when you served, will depend on the pension that you're on. And accordingly, at the moment, it's taking about 18 months from point of lodging paperwork with DVA to the completion of an acceptance of a claim. And in that time, that causes a significant amount of financial stress. I'll give you a quick snapshot of what we actually do. So for the period of August 2021, we provided emergency support to 106 veterans, immediate support to 73 veterans and their families that were in financial crisis, and that was $58,000 worth of crisis payments. We then also had to put 13 of our veterans into emergency accommodation, and we committed to 970 community hours in the month of August 2021. The difficulty that we have as an organisation is that we are not allowed to, or not entitled to, government funding because we deal with cash. So we could receive a phone call from a veteran to say that he's living in his car at the moment with his dog, and then we will put them in emergency accommodation for a week. But because we're paying with our credit card and putting them in accommodation wherever they are in the nation, then that is considered cash. We also provide e-vouchers, so a Woolworths voucher via an email for a family so that they can go and buy groceries, a voucher to a veteran or a spouse so that they can then also go and buy fuel for the car and get the kids to work and get the kids to school and they can get to work. All of this is considered cash. So we rely significantly on donations from the public, and then all of those donations, 100% of that goes into crisis payments. We, like everybody else that's in the not-for-profit world at the moment, is struggling with receiving any sort of payments from the public for a number of reasons. So we work very, very hard at trying to educate people about what we do. A lot of people don't understand that veterans are homeless because they believe that once you discharge, the government looks after veterans, and they do somewhat, but it depends on the situation. They also believe that the RSL looks after veterans, and they do in most situations again, but there are certain veterans that will slip through the cracks and who will end up with us. Sometimes there's a distrust of other organisations due to trauma that they have acquired during their service, so they may not want to go to other organisations, or they've heard things about us and they would prefer to come to us. So we have a few peak periods for us that really drives our calls for crisis assistance. November is definitely one of them for Remembrance Day, April with Anzac Day, things like the events that are going on and have been going on in Afghanistan for our younger veterans. That's causing quite a deal of grief at the moment, as does Christmas and New Year. That usually creates a lot of angst for a lot of the population in Australia, and for our veterans, that definitely drives a lot of crisis calls into Wounded Heroes. So we rely heavily on a lot of other agencies to assist us. We don't have a building that we can place, like a refuge that we can place our veterans in. We service the entire country. So we work heavily or very closely with a lot of agencies that do work in the homelessness space. We have wonderful partnerships with so many different ESO, ex-service organisations out there, as well as lots of DV charities and organisations as well that work in that space. So it crosses over, much like everybody else has mentioned. There's lots of reasons for homelessness in the veteran world, all for many of the same reasons, and some of them are slightly different because of the trauma that they may have experienced during deployments or their service, as well as the physical and psychological injuries that may have acquired as well.
Thank you, Karen. That's absolutely fabulous. You're doing a wonderful job there. And this is a new connection for us with you. Like, I've only just found you when I was reaching out looking for someone to speak on veterans and homelessness. From our organisation, we're familiar that we've got veterans in our homelessness cohort quite a bit, but we find they don't talk a lot. So, and that would be PTSD and multiple different reasons there. So hopefully now we can build a bigger relationship and support more in our area through you guys as well, which would be absolutely fabulous.
Yes,
So, and thank you for coming on board tonight and sharing with us.
Thank you, Theresa. Thanks for having me.
Hello, everyone. And isn't that just absolutely amazing? The insights that we have had tonight or this evening from all of our special guests and from you, Theresa. And I just want to share, guys, go grab your book grab your copy of Stories from the Streets, either on ebook, which is on Amazon. It'll be filtering out onto all platforms. You can go to mmhpress.com, get a printed copy, and support this book and everything that it means. Not only is it filled with stories that are just going to open up your heart and your mind to this really important conversation, but we may also help this book get to #1. So go and grab your Kindle copy. Okay. There's my 6-year-old coming to join us. You gotta love it. the live. Theresa, I'll let you finish up and just share with everybody what it means to get these stories out into the world and what it can do if everyone supports and gets behind the book. It'll be available in stores from November. Okay.
Look, the education that it's going to create around there, if we can, like I used the word, humanize homelessness with people out there, if we can get them emphasizing and understanding that this is their brothers or their sisters or their children or their parents that are actually could be homeless out there on the street, and in some cases they are, then that's going to make such a difference out there, because we're going to get more community support, we're going to get more push to change policy, we're going to get more housing to support people, and it's going to have such a great flow-on effect for the communities. It will be absolutely fabulous. And I know that I've written this book as a fundraiser for Agape, but I'm really happy to talk to organisations, other organisations in similar fields that want to use it as a fundraising tool as well. And let's see if we can work out something there. Let's make this multi-purpose, make it multi-use. Let's reach it as far as we possibly can. I personally have a goal of selling 1 million copies. And, you know, it's not about making money. It's a good bonus. We all need it. All of our organisations do. But it's about that education tool. Let's change what's happening out there for the better, and let's help as many people as possible. Thank you, Karen, so much for tonight.
Well said. So let's all get on the mission. Once we do it, it'll ripple out. That's how it happens. So share about this awesome book and leave reviews, and let's get the conversation started. Thank you to everyone for joining us, and thank you so much to Theresa for being amazing. All right, guys. Thank you to everyone. We're going to switch off live now. Go get your copy. There's links on mmhpress.com.
Thank you, everyone.